Tuesday morning, and so good morning to you, or good whatever time of day it is. I wanted to re-record this one because this is about running R, and I think things change from year to year. So I'm re-recording this one and I'll put this one up later. So we've got to get hold of R, we've got to get hold of R Studio, and we've got to run them and to produce some output. That's where we're going with today. So there's two ways you can do this. One way is to use an online thing called rstudio.cloud, and this is entirely online. You need a username and a password, but you don't have to install anything. This is free, at least to start with. I'll get to that in a second. The other way of doing it is to install R and RStudio on your computer, and either way is good. You'll probably want to get to installing it on your own computer in the end before you run out of free stuff. So I'm going to talk about both of those today. And the other thing to say, of course, is if you already have R and RStudio on your computer with Tidyverse installed, you are good to go and you don't have to worry about this lecture at all. Alright, so let's start with RStudio Cloud. I'm going to go over here. No, I'm not. I don't want to go there. I want to go over here. Alright, when you go to rstudio.cloud, this is what you will see. And I suppose I have to mention that you're used to .com and .edu and .ca and all of those things as web addresses, but there's a whole bunch of different ones now, and .cloud is one of those. rstudio.cloud is a place where you can run R and RStudio online without installing anything. So if you happen to already have a username and a password, you can log in from this front screen. If not, then get started for free is what you want. Now this used to be completely free, but now you have certain limitations for the free plan. And if you want more than that, you have to pay for it. I have an instructor account, which gives me a bit more room. If I had been organized, I would have covered the whole class, but I don't have that right now. Okay, so this won't make very much sense to you at the moment, but the free plan is good to go. Alright, so if we sign up, which I'm not going to go through with, but the process looks like this. This is one of my emails. So you have a number of choices here. You can either enter an email and an RStudio Cloud password in the top two boxes and then click on sign up. And if you do that, it will need to know your name as well. Or if you have a Google account like a Gmail, you can use that. If you have a GitHub account, you can use that as well. Use the username and password for that to sign into RStudio Cloud. Now I happen to have a GitHub account connected to this, so I could sign up with GitHub and that would work for me. So when you get to that point, then what it will do is it will sign you in using your new username and password, and it'll probably ask you to create to verify your email address at some point during the process. So this looks the same. This is actually logging in when you already have an account. So I'm going to log in with GitHub. And after a few minutes, it's going to fire things up. So I have rather a lot of things already going on. You won't when you first sign in. So the basic unit of work in RStudio is called a project, and that contains all your work, for example, for one course. So I have some projects, lecture notes, lecture codes, some other things here as well, which I don't use very much anymore. But the idea is that you can, I'm in the way here, you can create a new project. You have a limit of 15, I think. And this project has no title at the moment, and the slowest thing of the whole RStudio is actually creating new projects or opening old ones. So it's actually creating a project for us, which doesn't have a name yet. This is like Google Docs. What you can do is you can type up here in the box and give it a name. when it eventually starts up. I'm going to take another drink of tea here. Okay, now we have a project coming together. And this is what it looks like. Alright, I gotta make myself smaller, I think. There you go, much smaller me, which is much better. Let's put me down there. So, there are some things going on here. This thing on the left is called the console. This is where things actually get run. On the top right is the environment, where you see all variables you created, and the one files is a kind of a multi-purpose thing. It shows you files you have in the cloud, or you have plots that you've made, that kind of stuff. Now, the first thing you'll need to do before we can really do anything else is this. No, not in library, install packages. I'm losing my mind. Install.packages. And you can see as you start typing, it'll pop it up. Install packages, and then the one you want is called Tidyverse. And that has a lot of things that we're going to be using in this course. If you're used to R from before, you might have learned base R, in which case you won't need this, but in this course you do need this one. And while I'm waiting for that to happen, I'm going to go back up here and call this empty. So this project is now called empty. And you'll eventually see some stuff like this. So what I suggest you do is you create a new project which you can name with this course name. And now you can see it's actually going. It's downloading all of these things. For those of you who know something about, for example, Python, then you'll know that Python has this kind of ecosystem of extra stuff that people have written. And you can bring those into your programs and use pandas or use whatever you want to use. R is the same kind of way. It has this idea called packages. And what we're doing is we're actually installing not just one package, but a whole bunch of packages, things that people have written that will help us in what we do. And we install it once, and then we can use it anytime we want. And what this is doing is it's downloading some of these things. There are a lot of them. Don't worry about how many of them there are. But it will have to do this once for your project. And then it will install all of these, and then you can use them. Okay, so now we're actually done. And the first thing you do anytime you have any code is you say library tidyverse, and then you're ready to go, and you'll see something that looks like this. And then you're ready to go, and then you can go play. The installation happens one time. You do this once when you create a new project in RStudio Cloud. And the library happens every time. That's actually loading it so you can use it. Alright, so that's RStudio Cloud. That just gives you a very quick view of what's going on here. And now what did I have? I had here. So I think I said all of this. New untitled project. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this because this is true whichever version of R you're working with. At the left of the view is the console where we had the install packages thing happening. This thing on the left is called the console. And you can enter R commands and see output if that's what you really want to do. But a much better way to go, and I'll show you how this looks. We're going to create a new R notebook. And this has some text in it. This is called a template text, which you would normally get rid of. But what happens in here is you've got some ordinary narrative type text, and then you've got some code. This is called a code chunk. And when you run the code, it gives you, for example, a scatter plot in this case. So you have a whole report all in one go. And this is how you'll be doing your assignments. You can write, you can run code, you can talk about what the code produced, etc., etc. And this is using a mechanism called R Markdown. And that gives you a way of formatting your text, getting boldface and italics and things like that. all in plain text. So when you process this document, you can actually see what it looks like. So if I preview this, now we'll need to give it a name, A1. Alright, we'll save it as A1, and then we'll preview this. What it will show us is the text that we saw. This has got links in it, this has got italics in it, this has got code and output in it. And all of that stuff is stuff that I want to see when you do an assignment. So that's the idea. This is going to be the thing that you hand in. So I prefer working in R notebooks. And if you have your own R notebook, of course, what you do is you just zip out all of this and delete it, and you've got nothing left. And you can give it a new title. So probably you can call it My Notebook, which I can't spell. And then you can start doing whatever it is you want to do. Do stuff here. Alright, that looks much better. And what you will also see is in the Files pane over here that this A1 that we've created has also appeared over here because we saved it. And this is HTML that was the result of previewing it, and that's the file that you would actually hand in if it were an assignment. Alright, that's enough about RStudio Cloud. Alright, this is saying the same thing as I just said. Alright, we're going to make our own notebook, alright? So let's see if we can do that. Okay, so I'm going to grab some of this code, but I'm going to go create a new notebook. So let's have another new file, new R notebook, and we'll get rid of everything in here, and we'll save this first. We'll call this one test, and then we'll copy in whatever we're supposed to copy in. Okay, so we're going to start with this, and we'll see what this does in a minute. Alright, I got lots of things to explain. You remember this from before. I'm going to run this all and show you what it does when I eventually got all the things. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do this a slightly different way than what's in the notes, but this will work also. This is a ggplot plot, and I will explain to you what this all does in a minute, but what we're going to do is we're going to look at it first. Now, VZ. And presumably I'm drawing a histogram with this, yes I am. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to run these two things are called code chunks. The things with the backtick, backtick, backtick R and the backtick, backtick, backtick around them are called code chunks, and the only thing that should appear in here is actually R code. So the first one is actually loading the tidyverse package for us, so it's ready to go. That didn't show anything here because we've actually already done that. Now, what's happening in the next one? The next one is saying I'm going to generate 200 random standard normals. And then I'm going to draw a histogram of them. And so what we're hoping is that this histogram should look reasonably bell-curved. and you can see whether for yourself it's a little bit small there because it doesn't quite fit, but you can see it looks reasonably bell curved, except that we drew one value which was down near -4. So that was kind of surprising, but these data really are standard normal, and the shape of the histogram that we get is kind of bell curved, so it looks kind of reasonable. The other thing to say is when you draw as many as 200 observations, which is what we were doing, is that you can get individual ones that look quite extreme, just by chance. This isn't actually an indication that normality has failed. This is just a happenstance of a low value. Alright, now I have to break this up into pieces and show you what this does. This thing is called a tibble or a data frame. Before I do that, I'm going to show you what Z contains. You seem to have caps lock on. There. This thing Z is what R knows of as a vector. It's just a long string of 200 observations, 200 normal values. And these square bracket numbers on the left say how far you are through, so this 1.556 is the fifth one, and so on. And you can check that there are 200 altogether, 197, 198, 199, 200. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a data frame. And this is a tidy rectangular array like a spreadsheet of data. It's got a column called Z, one column, that's all it's got. And in Z are 200 rows, those 200 random normals. And you can scroll down and find your way through them. I'm clicking on next here. And then what's happening after that is you'll learn about what this means, but it's what we're making a plot using this thing that we call Z as the x-axis of the plot, and then we're making a histogram of it with 10 bins. And this is a slightly different one because we've done different data, I think. But again, it looks more or less normal. And the 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bins. You can have more bins if you want, and the problem with having more bins is that it looks rather more ragged and you get less of a sense of the shape. You can play with that until you find one that looks right. That we talk about too. So that's a little bit of R working for you. You won't understand the code completely yet, but that's some of the ideas about what it can do. And the idea is now, if we preview this notebook, then we'll get the picture of the whole thing looking nice and tidy. There's my data. Here's my histogram. And you can see that that's really too many bins to be worrying about in this case, but this is something you could hand in as an assignment. Alright, RStudio Cloud. Alright, we're now done with that. This coding business looks just the same in RStudio on your own computer, by the way. There's no difference one way or the other, so it doesn't matter which way you go. Alright, so we've done that. Okay, this is all done. Okay, you can follow this through. Alright, so that's RStudio Cloud. That will keep you going at least for a little while. And that's a good place to start if you're starting from nothing. I need a drink of tea because this is a little bit more hairy. We're going to install R and RStudio on our own computer. Now, what is actually happening in here? This looks like one thing. This is one thing that's called RStudio. But in the background, what this is doing is it's running something called R, which is actually interpreting all of this code and producing all the output for us. And when we run RStudio Cloud, it doesn't matter that they're two things. The RStudio will keep track of R for us. But when you're installing it yourself, you need to be a little bit more careful, because the first thing you've got to do is you've got to install R. Now this is a little bit finicky because this goes back to 1994, which is when R started, and so this is from the very early days of the internet. And in the early days, if you downloaded something from the other side of the world, it would take you a long time to download it. If you download it from U of T servers downtown, then it wouldn't take you nearly so long. So there was a big impetus to download things from somewhere close to you. And that's what this CRAN mirror is. And you can see there are mirrors all over the place, including one at U of T. You don't really need to worry about that. If you select the top one, then this will redirect you to something that's close to you anyway. And you'll see a screen that looks like this. And then the next stage is to look at that top box. You don't need to look at the rest of it. Look at the top box and say, what kind of operating system do I have? Do I have Windows? Do I have Mac? Do I have Linux? And jump to the appropriate one. So if you have Windows, which I don't, but if you have Windows, then you would jump to this, and then you would click on Base, and then download the latest version of R for Windows. On the other slides, this was only 3.5 because that was how far it had gotten, but 403 is the most recent one. Download that and install it in the usual way for Windows. And the same way for Mac, the same way for Linux. It works the same way. So that shouldn't be too hard. That's R. Now you never actually run R yourself, or at least I wouldn't. So what you also need is you need RStudio. I'm going to go back because I was playing with this. If you go to forward. If you go to rstudio.com, you'll see something like this. And they host a conference called rstudio.global, or :global, which is online this year. That's entirely, by the way, what you want is download. And what we're going to do is we're going to choose our version. You can see they have free ones and they have paid ones. The free one that you want is RStudio Desktop because you're running one instance of RStudio on your computer. And that's all you need. And so you can click on download. We already installed I already presented we did. And so what you've got to do is you've got to find your operating system, which might be Windows, which is the top one. It might be Mac, which is the second one. Or it might be some flavor of Linux, which is the others. I have Ubuntu, so I would download this one. Download and install these things in the usual way. And you can compile it from source and all that kind of thing, should you feel inclined to. Should you feel inclined to do so, which I don't. So that's the basic process. And then when you have RStudio up and running, it will be running on your own computer, and I have one or two of them floating about. I actually have an empty project. Yours will look something like this. Now, I made some changes, actually. Let's bring me back into the screen again. I made some changes because I'm kind of a coder at heart, and I code deep into the evening, and I don't like having a bright white background. And what you can do is you can go to Tools and Global Options, and eventually it will read them, and you're looking for Appearance. And what you can do is you can change the theme. This one is called something Midnight, I think. But you can change the theme, and you can change the editor theme, and you can change the color scheme. So you can play with that and find one that you like. I like a dark background and light text. And having a blue background means I can see the colors a bit more easily. That's my preference. The other thing that I did is the pane layout. Now, if we can get that out of the way for a minute, what you will find is you have console on the left at the bottom of many files that you have open. And I happen to like the console being on the right, and this is where in pane layout, this is where you can change it. So you can make this console, or you can have what you had, those things, and have the console bottom left. And I don't really want to restart RStudio, so we'll not do that right now. But this is what it will look like for you. And then if you want to change it back, pane layout, and we'll select console over here. That seems to have worked. So you can customize this to your preferences. And this untitled thing over here is actually an R script, so we don't really want that. So what we can do is we can make ourselves a new R notebook like we did before. And if we are in luck, we can go back over here and we can copy all of this. Copy. And we can paste it into, where did my empty go? Here. So we're going to get rid of all of this and we're going to paste in what we had. This is what we had before. So, library tidyverse, and that will work for me because I have tidyverse installed and will generate our normal random numbers, and I don't know what that was. Alright, we've completely blown our minds here, but normally speaking this would work. So we will leave this to go and do its own thing. I don't want this project. I want the project called empty. So I have no idea why that didn't work. Go away now. But that's the rough idea. So library tidyverse worked. Alright, don't know what happened here. We won't worry about that. So that's the procedure. Install R first from r-project.org using a local mirror and using the right one for your operating system. And then install RStudio from rstudio.com. Get the free desktop version and pick the installer that works for you. This is what it looks like when you run it, depending on your color scheme. And yeah, I suppose I should talk about projects. When you're running RStudio on your computer, here's my empty. This is a project called empty, and I created this with file and new project, which gives you a thing that looks like this. And on your computer, a project is associated with a folder, and it puts a special file in a folder to say this is an R project, so when it opens it, it knows the right thing to do. You can make a project in a new folder, which is what you will usually do. You can make a project in an existing folder that has some stuff in it already. Or you can also check out a R project from somewhere like GitHub and make a copy of it for yourself. Those are your options for creating a new project. Normally what you'd be doing is you'd be doing the first one. You could make a project called STAC33, for example, and that would be associated with a folder of the same name. And then you can do your work within that, install tidyverse there, and away you go. So all of those things work. I'm kind of wondering why this didn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this debugging one line at a time. So here we're going to generate 200 random normals, and you can see there are 200 of them, and they're stored in Z. And Z looks like that. Z will also appear down here. Let's get rid of the environment. Here is Z. So let's see why. The problem obviously was in this. So we'll run it again and see what happens. It's having a bit of a thing. Oh, because I didn't actually run library tidyverse. That was what the problem was. Or I didn't think I did. Okay, we'll run this and we'll run that, and that's all good now. You can see by the green stripe in the gutter. Here is the display of the data. Here is our histogram based on our 200 random normals. So it did actually work in the end. And we can also save this. So let's save this and give it a name. So we'll call this rnorm. And then we can process this. Sometimes it will say preview and sometimes it will say knit. So we're going to knit this one. And you can see the process happening over here. And then that will produce our report. Here is library tidyverse, here is our normal data, rather a lot of it, and here is our histogram. So that all seems to have worked out just fine. So I recommend using projects, and I recommend using notebooks within projects as a place to do your work, because you can preview or knit a notebook and produce something nice looking to hand in or to give to your boss or whatever it may be. So that was a slightly more detailed version of the lecture that I recorded before, but that will get you started whether you're having RStudio on the cloud or on your own computer. Either way should work for you. And if you have RStudio on your own computer already, then you are good to go.